Hello and welcome to another video, another reading vlog. Unlike other times when I start off these reading vlogs, I'm not going to give you a TBR because my TBR is going to be set by what happens tomorrow morning, which is the release of the Goodreads Choice Award nominees. I'm going to be filming my reaction video, at least that reaction part of it, tomorrow morning and hopefully start getting things ready for that in the morning. Which means I have just tonight to finish up the one book that I have on my TBR that is not part of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and that is this book, With or Without Me. I started it last night. I'm about a quarter of the way through because I'm 50 pages through and it's 200 pages. I find it really interesting. It's more of an essay type style, and I think the author is German. And I don't know if this was written originally in German, I don't know if this was written originally in German or if she wrote it in English, or if it was translated. So I think some of it might be that. It's not obvious grammatical errors or language errors or anything like that, but there's just something that I'm missing with the flow of the language. The first chapter were some interesting incidents that happened in her childhood that don't really seem connected to anything that I've gotten thus far. I don't know, it's fine, but I'm not sure. This probably won't end up very highly rated. So good thing I didn't read it last week when I had like all 4.5 star and 1 5-star reads. That being said, I am listening to an audiobook. The reason I didn't say that it was not part of the Goodreads Choice Awards is because it's bloodmarked, and that came out before the cutoff for Goodreads, so I have a strong suspicion that Bloodmarked will be on the Goodreads Choice Awards, which will serve me well in getting that done. I probably will finish tomorrow because I still have about 4 hours to go in the book. I'm about halfway in it. I am really, really loving this book. That being said, there's a lot of the things in here really frustrate me. So one of the things about Legendborn, it's based in Arthurian legend as if it has come down and been embedded with magic. So I have to be really careful with what I'm saying about this because there's a reveal at the end of Legendborn that if I say certain things about Bloodmarked might give that away. But one of the things about the system that Brianna notices right away is it's very white, very privileged, and she doesn't fit in, and she's looked down on because she's black. She also is discovering things about root magic, which is the magic related to her mother's bloodline, and how each of these magics view each other because they are connected in some ways. And she's really battling that, and there's a lot of systemic stuff that's going on that's being discussed in the first book. And then we get to the start of this book, and so many times things happened in Bloodmark made my blood boil. But just the way that the system decided to cover up what actually happened at the end of Legendborn for the sake of saving face, for the sake of maintaining their power. It's so ugly. It makes me so angry. And yet I know that it actually occurs in real life, which is probably what makes it so infuriating. It's just so well written. I cannot wait to get a hold of these books. The reason I'm not reading it physically is because I think it's Fairy Loot are doing special editions of Legendborn and Bloodmarked, which are coming out until February. A bit frustrating, but I'm not going to go out and buy a copy of Bloodmarked if I'm going to get those special editions in February. So I'm listening to it on Scribd because my library didn't have it and isn't even ordering it, which I'm like, well, okay, thanks. I think this book might get 5 stars for me. The only minor note that I have, it's not actually about the book, it's about the audiobook. It's a black woman who is narrating it, which fits because, you know, Brianna's black. The only problem is when she's doing the male voices, obviously every single man in this story, except for like a brief cameo by Bree's father, is white. But when she's trying to do a male voice, obviously it sounds like a black guy. Sounds like Shamar Moore in Criminal Minds. Not all of them, but that whole idea, that gravitas added to that, I'm just like, it's just a little bit ironic, but I'm also like, that's not what that sounds like. But anyway, it's just a minor thing. So I'm really loving that. This is okay. I've got about 200 pages read in Bloodmarked. So if I finish this and then I read more of Bloodmarked, I might just make my goal for today. Anyway, so I'm gonna go finish things up and get back to reading. Okay, so it's now Wednesday morning. I did not update the vlog at all yesterday because all yesterday was about my Goodreads Choice Awards video. I filmed a lot. I did a lot of work on that, so I didn't update at all yesterday, even though I had a lot to update about. So first off, finished a book. Finished Bloodmarked. Oh my word. Like, I was listening to it as I was working during my planning period, so I have my planning period first thing. And at a few different times, I'm like, I cannot concentrate on, and whatever I was working on, I don't remember what I was working on, but it required a little bit extra concentration. I'm like, I've got to stop the audiobook because this is getting really good. It's getting to the climax. I really want to read it, but I also have to do this thing called work. And so that was a little frustrating. It was just absolutely incredible to see how the author Tracy Deonn brought all of these things together. The stuff from the beginning of the book, you know, getting all the system stuff that I talked about before, and then bringing stuff in, and also Bree becoming her own person and realizing where her power comes from. So intense, so powerful. There were some reveals going on, and we're getting through, and I don't know if it had ever been released, whether it was a duology or a series, or, you know, I think it'll probably be a trilogy, who knows. But as I got to a certain point listening yesterday, I was like, there's gonna be another book. And now, unlike Legendborn, which I read a lot later in publication, so only a few months ago, didn't have to wait that long, I have to wait a while for the sequel to come out. I'm like, ah! The relationship stuff, everything. This is definitely gonna be a 5-star book. I loved it so much. So then I needed another audiobook, and I picked up the first of my, well, not the first, because Bloodmarked was also a Goodreads Choice Award book, but I picked up the first since I saw the list. And I picked up a middle grade one. It was short. I figured I could finish it, knock it out. I didn't end up cross-stitching in the evening, so I didn't end up finishing it yesterday. I'll finish it this morning. And it, I should have realized, based on the author, because I have read another one of his books, and I think it was for one of my SDSL projects, not last summer, but maybe the summer before, and it's Phil Stamper. So that's the author, and the book I read before is The Gravity of Us, and I remember just being incredibly disappointed with it and how preachy it was and how unrealistic a lot of the stuff was. Cue Small Town Pride. Now, The Gravity of Us was YA. Small Town Pride is middle school. Middle grade. The narrator does not sound like he's in 8th grade. He sounds like he's not a fully grown adult, but definitely YA sounding, like upper YA sounding. And the stuff that he's talking about and dealing with, like, I'm sure 8th graders deal with that. And a lot of 8th graders are more mature, but I'm not coming at this from a place where I don't know how they act. Taught middle school for 7 years. He does not act like an 8th grader. Also, the stuff that he's dealing with, yes, it's reality, but at the same time, it's very preachy, it's very stereotypical. The bad guys, the villains are very one-dimensional. I'm not enjoying this at all, so this is going to be much lower ranked. The fact that this is one of the 16 middle grade books on the nominee list, I'm like, there's so many really good middle school books, middle grade books. This is the one that you give us, or one of the ones that you give us. There's less than 800 ratings on Goodreads for it. As far as physical books go, I got a bunch from the library, took a picture, I stacked them up in 3 stacks, middle grade, YA, adult, the 3 categories that I'm doing, and sent a picture to Mom, had her pick one for me. And I was excited about the one that she chose. So physically I'm reading The Marvelers. And I don't know whether it was because I was falling asleep or I tended to fall asleep more easily because it was so lackluster or not engaging at first. I'm not getting into this. there's a lot of stuff that is telling, not showing. It's opening up with a different type of magic school, and she's a new type of person going there. Like, her father fought a court case so that she could go to this school. I'm only 50 pages in, so maybe things will change and maybe I'll be able to engage with it. I just could not, like, hook onto the book to read last night, which was a little frustrating because I wanted to get more pages in. But hopefully it was just all of that going on and it'll be better, you know, under the light of day. But I mean, what I read pales in comparison to Amari. Okay, I'm finishing getting ready to go out on my run, but I wanted to do an update, and I don't know how quick it'll be because I've read a lot of books since the last time I checked in, which was just yesterday, but it was yesterday morning. And because I have so many books to read for my Goodreads Choice Awards project, I've been listening to a lot on audiobook because that's what I have the most time for on the weekend. So the last time I updated, I think I had already finished Bloodmarked and started Small Town Pride. So since then, I have finished Small Town Pride. I'm gonna list them and then come back and give my thoughts. Started and finished How to Heal a Griffin. Both of those are for the middle grades list. I also started and finished Legends and Lattes, and that's for the adult list. And I have started Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Small Town Pride, my thoughts from the beginning stand true. It just was very preachy, very formulaic and message shoving, and it didn't need to be. There were some things that were good, but overall it wasn't the book for me, and I didn't really like it. It was fine, but nothing groundbreaking. And I just, as a teacher, I just want some of these authors to, like, actually go into school and see how schools run, because all this stuff about basketball for middle school, no, they don't do all that for a middle school. It's not like that. Like, we can barely get kids to come to the games. Anyway, side note. Okay, How to Heal a Griffin. I really enjoyed this one. It's short, sweet, fairly simplistic in the magic, but what it does with the magic, it takes place on the Amalfi Coast in Greece. And of course their magic is tied to the Greek gods, which makes it seem like it's going to be a play off of Percy Jackson, but it ends up not being. It seems a lot more homespun. Like, you think of the so-called old wives' tales and superstitions, like those are more real in this. And the main character, who I think it's Giada. Of course, I didn't read this physically, so I don't know for sure what her name was. Her whole family, they're healers, devotees of Apollo, but she has never wanted to go into healing people. She's always wanted to work with animals, but that's seen as not her path. And so through, obviously, How to Heal a Griffin, through healing the animals, like, things get complicated and things happen, and then they're ultimately resolved. It was short, it was sweet. I loved the voice of the narrator. I loved how authentically Greek and modern Greek it felt, and the references, they didn't feel forced or out of place. I did appreciate that. Is it going to be the most amazing thing? No. So those are the middle grades ones that I've read. And then I started Legends and Lattes. Everyone has been singing the praises of this book and how much it is a cozy fantasy, and there's not really a quote-unquote plot to it, and just how heartwarming and wholesome it is. I agree 1000%. Such a great book. I mean, you think cozy, small town, etc. That was it, to a T. You've got great characters. I don't know the pronunciations. I don't remember a lot of the pronunciations and spellings because I read it as audio, and the author narrates it, which is really cool. I definitely will be adding this to my list to purchase, which is fantastic. But I loved every bit of it. And the idea of bean juice and milky bean juice for a latte. Hands down, super cute book. Like, a fantasy book can be cozy. People's minds are blown and they continue to be blown. So I really liked that one. And I have started Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Like, I literally just started it on the way home, only about 20 or so minutes into it. And I can see why so many people were so confused as to the fact that it's an adult book. Because so far, from what I've read, it reads stereotypical YA. Not in a bad way, but the daughter, I think, is mid to late teenager, and she's learning stuff about her. You know, the coming of age, that's a typical trope for YA. The age of the narrator is YA. Maybe I'll learn later why it's considered adult fiction, because it is on the adult fantasy list. So, but I've just barely started that. And then when it comes to the physical book that I'm reading, The Marvelers, I am appreciating it more now that I was able to stay awake last night. I thought about coming to get the update, the camera for an update last night, because I was reading her course schedule. It's so funny because one of her classes is West African folklore, and the professor is Dr. Kwame Mbalia, which Tristan Strong, author, like, hat tip there. So loved that. So far it's reading fairly typical. It doesn't seem to be standing out to me at all. A lot of typical middle grade stuff. She's ostracized, sort of has a friend, but not really. And because it's not the same dynamic that you have in Amari, I think ultimately that The Marvelers is going to pale in comparison to Amari. Amari is just amazing. So there's my update. I'm going to be continuing, hopefully, to finish The Marvelers tonight. I won't be finishing God of the Moon Goddess tonight, but maybe tomorrow. Okay, so I wasn't going to do an update today. I just didn't feel like it. But then I realized I'm reading so many books right now, I kind of need to update every day. I'm really not great with this whole lighting thing, but I hope that's better. We'll see. So since the last time I checked in, I have finished 2 books. One I literally just finished like 2 minutes ago. One I finished last night, and that is The Marvelers. So I will say I did get into this book more as I read more. But that doesn't mean that I enjoyed it more or thought it was outstanding. I thought it had a lot of potential, but it never quite got there. The magic system sounds really intriguing. The setup of the villain sounded really intriguing. The way that Clayton built up the friendships and some reveals. I don't want to use the word intriguing again, but it worked. However, so many times there would be something about the magic system that would have been explained previously, and then something else happens, and it just didn't feel actually fleshed out. That's why I said intriguing. Not good, but intriguing. Like it could be good, but it never quite got there. And there were some times that I think that she forgot about other reveals. Like the main character's dad is, so the main character's name is Ella. Her dad is basically the guy who runs the underworld. In one of their lessons that's pictured in here, the teacher mentions that, you know, her dad runs the underworld. Well, later on in the book, one of her other friends finds out that her dad runs the underworld, and he's like, oh wow, that's so cool. And I'm like, you already knew that. You were already told that. Why are you just now? There were some things that just didn't quite gel and come together. So I think this was like an average read, like a very low 3-star, but it definitely is not going to be my favorite of the YA, especially when you have it to compare to Amari. Will I ever stop comparing things to Amari? Probably not. Okay, so the other book that I finished just now is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And I had mentioned before that I really struggled to see why people said that this was adult and not YA. I still think that this book is sort of a difficult category because it's broken into sections and it covers a long span of time. The more that I think about it though, it really does fit a lot of YA tropes. And I've read several stories now set in this Japanese or Chinese mythology and the world, the celestial kingdom, She's the daughter of the moon goddess, all these different realms. I've read them all as YA, and this struck me as very similar. I'm not saying it's bad. I didn't find anything technically bad with this. There's a bit of insta-love. It's very much like Elizabeth Lim's books, in a way. There's not the same height of tension that you have in Elizabeth Lim's books, like The Dragon's Promise, but you have so many different stories being told. So many different problems that she's facing. Yes, there's the ultimate problem of she's trying to free her mother, and everything is advancing towards that. But it takes place, it's like, it's episodic. It's like it's a TV show. It could easily be turned into a TV show with, you know, each part being a different season. And I honestly don't see how this is a duology, because the second book came out this year. There were things that I really, really enjoyed about this. I did not mind my read at all. I just am kind of struck. It just feels average. It just feels like an average book to me. So not a bad read, not a great read. Probably something that I will check out the sequel from the library to see where things end up going. The book that I have picked up, I forgot that I started it because it's on my Kindle. I realized that I do have Everblaze, the third book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series, so I started that. I have it electronically, which is why I didn't realize I had it. So I started that because I need to get through those. So I'm going to be reading that one physically. And then audiobook wise, I don't know why I keep putting it off. I'm going to do The Lost Metal. I didn't get the physical book because I want it to match, obviously. So I got the audiobook with my Libra FM credit. So I'm going to start The Lost Metal and we'll see how things go from there. Okay, so I just finished filming part 1 of my November wrap up. So I figured I'd go ahead and do the update while everything was set up over here. And since the last time I updated, I did not get started on Lost Metal because I was reading in my reading chair and I wanted to make much farther progress than I was making in Everblaze, so I just decided to keep reading. Now, it took me longer because I kept falling asleep and I think I missed some things, which was weird because I would realize that I was not fully paying attention and I would flip back several pages and then I'd read it and I'm like, I remember this. But somehow some of those connections or important bits I still missed. Thankfully, it was only 150 pages and those books are so big. This one is like 612 pages or 609 pages, something like that. So not too bad. I can for a lot. It's middle grade. It's not super dense. So, okay, so there's things that have happened in several different books that I've read lately where the system is oppressing the people and twisting what is happening to perpetuate the wrongness of what's going on. It's hard to put into words, but it's so true to life in what's happening. We've just gotten to a point in Everblaze where to maintain, so something has happened. So Sophie was asked to do something. And, well, not asked. The council told her to do this thing with this person because they wanted to find out more information. Like, basically they wanted to interrogate him. And so they asked her to do something. And things go catastrophically wrong. But the thing is, she wasn't volunteering for this. But when things go catastrophically wrong, and so catastrophically wrong, not even just the death, like there's destruction of the capital city, what do? They blame the child. They blame the child who they asked to do this thing. Infuriating, but so true. Like, people in power will do this. And then they'll release only certain information which colors everybody's view of the situation and makes that person into the bad guy. Like, at the funeral, she does something which it turns out it was against the law and against a treaty that she had no knowledge of because she was raised in the human world. And she had no knowledge of all of these different treaties. Like, you think that people would have actually told her about this. And she figured, yeah, this is probably not a good idea, but she's like, maybe I can do this. And it turns out to nearly start a war. Is that bad? Yes. However, she had no idea that it went against a treaty. She had no idea that she would possibly cause a war. And also, the person who came, they were looking for something to get mad about, and they end up blaming a child. So those two things are put together. The thing that they have done to Sophie, where I left off, so mad about. I hope this gets resolved in the 100 or so pages that I have left, because it better not go on to those other books. Not a fan of that. But it is so true in how when the system is broken and the people in power know that the system is broken, but to fix the system, they would lose power. They don't fix the system. They blame the easiest person to blame and still try to hold on to power and cobble together a broken system instead of actually fixing it. I don't like it, but it's very well written in Everblaze. Really good. So I am going to finish that. I'm going to wrap up this update. I'm about to go get angry again and read Everblaze and hope that things are resolved. Okay, so I'm here to wrap up the vlog. I'm in a slightly different location because I just finished putting together a puzzle, and yeah, I did it in here because I've got a different puzzle going in my usual puzzle spot, and it is now Sunday evening, and I haven't really read anything physically today. I did read a few pages in the book I'm reading in Spanish right now, Yo Naomi Leon, which in English is Becoming Naomi Leon by Pam Munoz Ryan. And I just read 4 pages in that, but that's the current book that I'm reading. As far as what I'm reading in the my Goodreads project, I am just over halfway through The Lost Metal. I love every single bit of Cosmere connections. Like, something just got revealed from what I would have thought the most unlikely source. I'm just like, ah! Okay, I can't say anything, obviously. But there have been several videos that have gone up by other booktubers that have talked about the Lost Metal and like Cosmere implications and things. I haven't watched those yet on purpose because I knew I was going to read the Lost Metal soon. So probably tomorrow I'll go back and watch those videos. That means the only Cosmere book that I haven't read is, I just forgot the name, Rhythm of War. So the only Cosmere book that I haven't read yet is Rhythm of War. Plus, I think the White Sands comic, but apparently I don't know if I'm ever going to get that. But the main parts of the Cosmere, I've read almost all of it now. And to think that this time last year, I had no idea what that was. But I will say, if Lost Metal does really, really well in the Goodreads Choice Award, it's almost a disservice that Lost Metal is on the list because you have to have read all of the Cosmere books before to get all of these connections. Sure, will you get the story as it's going along? Yes. The basic story seems like you'll understand it. But even to get to that basic story, you have to read the previous 6 books in that series, much less the Stormlight Archive and Warbreaker and Elantris. My brain was blanking on the Cosmere novel names. So it's almost a disservice that that's on there. And I'm glad that going into the project this year that I had already started my Brandon Sanderson plan, because if I had tried to do that, there would have been so much that I would have been trying to cram in and just would not have been worth it. Will it get my vote? I don't know, maybe. I love it so much, but obviously can't say why because so many spoilers, but we shall see in that respect. But what that means is I am wrapping up this week's vlog. So if I'm in a slightly different location, it's because I just went to go get the books that I've read this week and in the Goodreads list, and I've read a lot of them on audiobook. I've read several physical copies as well, but the first one of those was The Marvelers. The second one was Everblaze on my Kindle, and I have started Never Seen. I'm trying to think because Marvelers I started on Tuesday and then finished it on Thursday, which means, yeah, that's right. Those are the physical books that I've read. And then on audiobook, I've read How to Heal a Griffin, Small Town Pride, Legends and Lattes, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and now The Lost Metal. So that's 5 books. So if I hold up my books for this week, it's not all that many. But maybe I'll put in a Goodreads logo or something. But I've read a lot of books this week and I'm really excited. So there you have it. There's all of the books, a lot of them, too many maybe, who knows, that I've read this week, and I'm looking forward to all of the books that I'm going to read next week. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.